Migwit and welcome. In this chapter we're looking at energy from several different viewpoints, particularly now the 5 types of physical energy in the body, how they work and what inhibits and blocks them from working. We will also be covering how we can open up these channels again and get our energy back working. So let's dive right in now and have a look at the 5 types of physical energy in the body. What is energy? So energy covers a really broad spectrum, and we're going to start with the physical, looking at the physical energy of the body. So the first place I'll start with is how our carbohydrates turn into usable calories, and this is worked out on a system called a Krebs cycle in the body. So that when you eat your foods, it goes through a series of chemical changes, then it gets into what's called a Krebs cycle or a citric acid cycle, and then this converts into usable calories. Generally speaking, someone who has chronic fatigue, this Krebs cycle is not working. So the food is going in, it's actually turning into blood sugar rather than usable calories, and the person doesn't have the energy then for them to use. The Krebs cycle, also known as the citric acid cycle, or as you can see here, it's called the energy production cycle. So the carbohydrates in our foods turns to glucose. It goes through these chemical changes and it leads us into what is called the Krebs cycle. So this sort of theoretically spins, and then we have a piston at the bottom, which is our ADP, ATP energy. ATP is the one everyone's looking for. It is our energy, our get up and go, our motivation, our ability to do loads of things, activities in our lives. ADP is lesser spoke about, but it is our ability to rest, to relax, and to regenerate cells. So an example is if this isn't working, a person is anxious and can't rest at all, or you wake in the morning feeling really tired, therefore you haven't regenerated and there isn't enough energy to get through the rest of the day. Most common, I find people who have chronic fatigue are blocked in around this area called pyruvate or some of the stages beforehand, which means they often show for high blood sugars because the glucose is going off into the blood and it is not converting to usable calories inside of the body. So in later stages, we're going to talk about what blocks it and how to unblock this area. But I'd love to first introduce you to the Krebs cycle, and this is the very first sort of lesson on energy and how it physically is not working inside of the body. The second physical factor is oxygen, and maybe the most important one for the entire system. Oxygen is required for every single cell in the body to work. It is the ultimate nutrient. So when we take our vitamins and our minerals, or we're eating really good food, it's because different tissues in the body requires different pH levels, but also different minerals and vitamins to get oxygen into the cells. So a cell has 3 stages to itself. One, it is created from another cell cloning itself. Then the old cell dies off. The new one is created lovely and strong from an original blueprint. Then it is maintained. Then it clones itself and dies off again. So this is the 3 stages, okay? Oxygen is required for each of these stages. If in the 3rd stage, which is called apoptosis, if this isn't working properly, we have buildup of toxins in our bodies. These can be called free radicals, they can be called lots of different things, but this is areas of the body where cells are not dying off and are getting stuck and stagnant. Now, oxygen is how you clear those out. So on this course we'll be talking about lots of different ways for oxygen to get into the body. It will be about eating the right nutrition, but even as we eat the right nutrition, if the Krebs cycle isn't working, it's not being absorbed properly. So we get our Krebs cycle working so we can get our oxygen pathway working, and therefore all that old toxic substance in the body can once again leave. This here is what is called the porphyrin and hemoglobin synthesis pathway. So it is about hemoglobin, how it is produced, and porphyrins are some of the dysfunctions that can happen in the DNA which cause genetic issues for people. We're not going to look too deeply into it. I'm simply showing you the scientific representation of the oxygen pathway. And we require enough B6 to absorb enough B9, which is folic acid, to absorb enough B12, which is essential with everything to do with psychological issues, to absorb iron. And this is what's representative. So we need enough B6, enough B9, enough B12 to absorb iron so that we can actually get oxygen around the body. So often you'll hear people saying they're anemic and they're low on iron, they'll go and take iron, and for the time they take it, it's okay-ish. But as soon as they stop, those iron levels go down. But because they haven't addressed the B6, the B9, or the B12 issues, the iron issue is never usually addressed much. A lot of things can happen on this pathway. As for why DNA genetics go out on people, it's very common for people who have addiction issues to be blocked on this path and are self-soothing using other drugs or alcohol. And very often people who have psychological issues, there's an issue on this pathway. So why I'm showing you this is to show you that when you don't have enough oxygen getting into the cells or enough minerals or vitamins to carry the oxygen into the cells, it leads to a whole host of other issues in the body. So oxygen is the most important, crucial nutrient in the body. By far, it fixes absolutely everything if we can get it in. And if you have health issues, there's probably somewhere inside of the cells that is not receiving the oxygen as it ought to. The third factor to consider with energy in the body is the thyroid gland. So the thyroid is here in the throat, and you can actually feel this area. If this feels quite hard, there's something happening with the thyroid, or if it feels quite warm. Very common to have something has gone out with the thyroid when someone has chronic fatigue. And actually, this day and age, it's surprising if someone doesn't have a thyroid issue because it's responsive to Wi-Fi and frequencies, and we are swimming in an ocean of it. So with thyroid dysfunction, if a person is underactive, they tend to be very tired, slow, sluggish, and find it very hard to lose weight. If they're hyper, they can be up at 5 in the morning, walking miles and miles and miles. Food just goes right through them and they cannot put on weight. So there's the two extremes. And most people are somewhere in the middle. The hormone system begins in the head. We have the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the pineal, and the thyroid. And this is a really important gland for those messenger signals to get down to the end of the body. So very often someone is having problems in maybe the testes, in the womb, in the ovaries, in these areas, but actually it's coming back to the thyroid. The signal just isn't even getting down there and back up again. Signals go down and back up again. So if there's something out with the thyroid, you can often have issues with the heart. You'll certainly have issues with the whole hormone system. Feel really not so good. You might know why, but you generally don't feel so good when the thyroid's out. Can have extreme issues with control if it really is an issue. And certain food intolerances don't really help it either. So we'll be discussing in the course ways to support our thyroid. This image here now shows the hormone system and the glands in the body. So the primary one I would associate with energy is the thyroid gland. So here's the brain glands. Okay, the hypothalamus gland is the main central computer of all of the hormones in the body. It gives directions to the pituitary gland, which then starts to map out the information to the body, and it receives feedback. And the pineal gland also has many other functions. All of these signals has to go through the thyroid gland. So it is a sort of regulator in the hormone system. However, if there is issues with the thyroid, you may have heard of hypothyroidism, where a person gets very, very tired, very fatigued, they're able to put on weight. It is incredibly important for the metabolism of the body. It can go the opposite way, where somebody is hyper and they cannot put on weight and they cannot relax at all. So it can go up and down their thyroid. If there's any issues in the thyroid at all, you'll find that the information from the pituitary is not getting down to the lower parts of the hormone system. So important to know this, because very often when someone has issues with the ovaries, with the testes, with the womb, they're looking for all sorts of bizarre procedures when actually they may just need to treat their thyroid gland. The most common way to treat the thyroid is with iodine and selenium. These two are very important. Zinc is also super important there. A really common reason for the thyroid to go out is mercury fillings. Mercury going straight down on the thyroid just does not work long term. It isn't an ideal situation. Many other reasons. It is our main communication center. It is our throat chakra, which is how we communicate. If at any time in our life we have been stifled, stopped, not being able to speak our truth, you may find that the thyroid is showing up with some issues. So this is most definitely a consideration when looking at energy in the body. The adrenal glands. You may hear about this probably more than anything, where the body is held in fight or flight. This creates an inflammation in the body, and this can show itself in many, many different ways. So with the adrenal glands, okay, so they're connected to the thyroid. They're on the same electrical circuit, like the meridian system. So if the thyroid is having issues, it will draw energy from the adrenal glands, and this can make someone very, very tired. A shock or fright or something kind of traumatic may have happened to a person and has locked the adrenals into fight or flight. So our subconscious mind does not know the difference between now and 5 years ago. It doesn't have time. It feels like it's always happening right now. So the adrenals can lock into that fight or flight, and it's just go, go, go. It's like they're spinning, flying all the time. And the person is in anxiety, cannot rest, cannot settle, can be exhausted but find it hard to sleep, can be tired all day long, and then 9 or 10 o'clock at night become alert, and then find it really hard to get to sleep. So the adrenal glands are a very big consideration in chronic fatigue, and probably hold the key to bringing a person back into balance again. This image I'm showing you here is the kidneys, and on the very top here is the adrenals. So they're like little hats that sit on top of the kidneys. The adrenal is in the hormone system, and there is a very unique function with the adrenal glands. If the thyroid gets too tired or it's really drained, it's not able to function properly, it's able to pull energy from the adrenals. And if this is carrying on for a very long time, you can certainly guarantee yourself adrenal fatigue. And the thyroid also, because there's something blocking it as well. The adrenals, I'll show you in another chart, are actually very high up the back and very close to the heart. So there is another function in the body where the fight or flight kicks in. The right side of the heart actually thickens up to push the blood harder so that you can fight or flight. And these days we don't do either. We don't fight and we don't flight. We more commonly freeze, staying in situations. And there is a whole lot of reasons as to why this is. And we can't always just run away from our problems, I suppose. And maybe we're not also emotionally equipped to deal with our emotions around the issues. So the poor adrenals just get very, very tired. And this causes a lot. I mean, it would be in every case of chronic fatigue is going to be adrenals just super tired. And there is programs running in the body that are telling it to keep on pumping the adrenaline because the issue is still there. So the fight or flight carries on and the adrenals get really tired. And what ends up happening is we end up in bed for long periods of time. Days, months, weeks, long periods of time when the adrenals really give way. The kidneys are a very big factor that are often missed. So the kidneys are often missed in general in health. They are up quite high on the back. They're behind the 11th and the 12th rib. They're protected there behind us, and they look like seeds. They're the seeds of life. And they are our connection to our ancestors, past lives. There is a lot of information in the kidneys, and they are the main regulator. They regulate every system in the body, and they filter the blood, and there's teensy tiny little nephrons in the kidneys. Now, it is said that once, if they break down, they don't grow back again. So the kidney is a particularly special organ in that the large intestine, for example, if tissue gets damaged there, it'll regrow itself back in about a week. Whereas the kidneys, we don't have that sort of privilege with, so we really want to take care of our kidneys. If the kidney function is in any way blocked up or not working, we can feel really not okay. And we don't know why. Just a general feeling of unwellness when the kidneys are not functioning as they ought to be. They are connected to fear. And if we are being held in a state of fear, this wears down the kidney functions. So it's very important that we look at the kidneys. It's not something that often gets mentioned, but it's something that I have definitely noticed needs addressing when a person has any kind of illness, is to look at the kidneys. It's hugely an emotional organ, and it is a connection to our base chakra, who we are, how we feel in the world, if we feel safe or if we feel unsafe. It certainly factors in on how the kidneys are doing. Here is our lovely kidneys. This is on a female body, but you can see how high up the back it is and how close it is to the heart. On the very top, we have those little adrenal caps, so we do. And although they're quite high up the back, they're generally related to the base chakra. So this is our foundation in life. This is who we are, our connection to our family, our ancestors, our genetic expressions. They are the seeds of life. They look like seeds. They are the regulators of the body. They regulate pretty much everything that's going on via the blood network. And they're prone to getting toxic metal and fungal toxins in them, which is usually what people's issues can be. If these are under functioning, there is no way the body can feel okay. It won't feel okay, but you may not relate it to kidney energy. There's a general overall feeling of unwellness with the kidneys. And it can be in varying degrees depending on where it is of what it is. There's certain requirements that the kidneys need to function properly, but generally the emotion of fear is what wears them down more than anything else. Fear looks like a lot of different things. The ultimate fear is the fear of death, which is where all fears bring us back to. So the kidneys are a really, really important system to look at when looking at your overall health, but in particular looking at energy in the body. So in this chapter, we looked at physical energy in the body, which includes the Krebs cycle, the oxygen pathway, which is also known as the hemoglobin synthesis pathway. We looked at the thyroid, which is connected to our hormone system, the adrenal glands, which affects the hormone system, and the kidneys, which is a filtration system, a regulator, and is on the blood. Okay, so these are the 5 physical factors which very much affect our energy and how the systems in our body works.